Hey guys, it's Allan Whatmore here, and in this video, I'm going to give you a framework on how to transform your sales mindset so that you can genuinely help every single prospect that comes through the door to help them get towards their goal. Okay, and I've just got a really simple drawing here that I just want to take you through. So, in terms of a standard sales process that you'll typically have, you may have the first part, which is the discovery. Okay, and this is the part where you're asking all the right questions in order to understand people's current situation, where they want to get to, their goals, their challenges, the impact that it's causing them on facing these challenges, the goals again, for example, what that actually means for them as well. And so if you think about it, until you know this information up front, you're in a really hard position to be able to see if you can genuinely help someone. You might have an inclination, okay, based on the stuff that they've told you so far, but you genuinely don't know 100%, right? And so this is, let's say if you're a financial planner, this might be like a fact find process or something similar, or just your general discovery process, for example. Then once you've got that info and you've ticked that off, then you know, okay, I can genuinely help this person, for starters. Next is the pitch, right? And that'll be a process that you take them through, okay, what your service entails, the process that you go through, what the result is of that process, so on and so forth, right? So you want to make sure that the person doesn't, unless they understand exactly how your process works and they know it in intricate detail, then like they're not going to work with you most likely, or they will potentially, but they won't fully understand the process. And so therefore, if something necessarily doesn't go according to plan from day one, then there's a high chance that they'll churn, okay, or they'll stop working with you. So you want to tick this off, right? Until you know this part, until they understand the process fully, most likely most people are going to work with you, or they're not going to buy. It's like, typically the common saying people say is people don't buy features, okay, they buy outcomes, right? And that is entirely true. But if you think of the outcome, getting people to their goal, unless they understand exactly how it works and what it'll do for them, then they're not going to have the confidence to be able to take that next step and actually work with you, right? So you want to make sure that people understand the product or the service that you've got. Next is your Q&A, right? Or this might be your post-pitch process. And the reason you'll have this is typically when you explain something to someone and you run them through, especially if it's something complex, like if it's to do with financial advice or investing in property, for example, there might be a lot of intricate details that just people, it just skips them. Like they don't fully understand it, right? And understandably, okay, they're not in that industry, right? And so typically for prospects or anyone that you're speaking to, in fact, you probably might have had this yourself where you've been in a room and someone's presented something to you and you're like, yeah, it sounds good, but there's just gaps in your understanding. And a lot of people feel embarrassed or vulnerable to ask what they might think is a silly question. But unless you go through this process and ask and root out any gaps in their understanding, people aren't going to have the confidence to progress with you, right? And what's going to happen is when you get to the investment, okay, these are going to become objections, and therefore you'll prevent people from actually getting to your goals, right? So having this process in place is super important. Q&A or a post-pitch process. Then once you've ticked that off and you've rooted out all the concerns or gaps in their understanding, then you go to the investment, right? And you go through how it works, the process, methods, all that kind of stuff, right? And so unless people understand exactly how this works, then there's always going to be some sense of fear or ambiguity, or they might see the value in it, okay? And so therefore you want to tick this off. And then after that, you'll then typically have objections. And a lot of people typically fear objections, right? Like it can be uncomfortable to go through this with people and they think, oh, the person doesn't, like it, or they don't see the value in it. But typically, if that's the case, and there'll always, in most instances, be these objections or concerns that people have, it's usually to do with something earlier on, which can be uncovered before going into this process as well. And so you want to look at this as a way for people actually giving you the reasons as to what's stopping them from moving forward. It might be they don't understand the product, or they have a concern about the value, or they have concern about the funds in order to fund it, or it might be that they're just in a bit of fear, for example. And that might be from bad past experience or the fact that they've just never done it before as well. And then afterwards, you'll help people get towards their goal, right? Which is a happy place. They start working with you, which is really, really good. And so the reason why I'm saying this to you is that, let's say, for example, you had someone come through and they were just like, okay, you get to the discovery and they didn't want to go through the discovery. They're just like, okay, just tell me the investment and we'll go from there, right? What happens is that people, because they don't understand, you haven't understood if you can genuinely help them, okay, and they don't understand the product or the process, this means nothing. This is just a number, right? So I guess what I'm saying to you is that this, having a process in place and sticking, not just sticking to that process, but you believing that this process is the only way that you can help people get towards their goal, and helping people get to a point where they're understanding the fact that this process is actually in their best interest, okay, in order for them getting towards their goal, you're just going to have a lot more conviction in yourself. You're going to be a lot more at ease. You're going to be a lot more calmer. You're just going to have a lot more confidence in yourself that you're genuinely helping people and that you're not just trying to sell someone, right? So hopefully that makes sense, okay? It's like, and a good example is, think of like a GP. You go to a doctor and you say, I've got lower back pain, for instance, and I just need a script for Panadine Forte or for morphine, or I just need antibiotics, right? The GP in many instances is not going to give you that script straight off the bat. And the reason is because they have a process in place where if they skip this process and something goes wrong, then they potentially risk losing their license. And so the risk of losing their license means more to them than being able to just give someone a script for something that may or may not work out with them. Similar to a GP, if you think about it, right? There's probably only, a handful of symptoms that one can experience, but there's, hundreds of different potential illnesses. And so therefore, what I'm saying is you need to think of yourself like a GP. You need to think that if you don't go through this process, there's a greater risk of not being able to help someone than it is of sticking to this process, even though it's uncomfortable. And I know when you're thinking about this, you're thinking, mate, Allan, this is uncomfortable, right? Like, if someone wants to know, then they just want to know, okay? But the fact is, ask yourself, do you genuinely believe that that not sticking to this process is going to, do you genuinely believe that if you don't stick to this process, you're actually going to help someone get to this goal? So hopefully that's making sense, okay? If you would like to see a system like this that works for your business, where we help you build a client acquisition system and walk you through this process, then there should be a link to booking a call in the description below. You can use that. You don't have to. It's absolutely fine. But hopefully this is making sense. A really good way of putting it is, I've got a client personally that looks at this as their North Star. And that's how you've got to look at it as well. This is going to keep you sane. It's going to keep you confident, and it's going to let you know that you're genuinely helping prospects get to that next stage. Hopefully that makes sense. My name is Allan Whatmore. I really appreciate your time. I hope you have a fantastic day, and I will speak to you soon. Okay, bye for now.